And the families, quite rightly, are asking the question again, is it possible to revisit that idea of getting our family members out and giving them a full and proper burial. So it was re-looked at properly again in the 1970s for those reasons, and yes, the Army and the Royal Engineers came together and worked up a plan to put a floating excavator and a pontoon and a complete wood roadway across the field, and managed to get in with the right sized equipment to get the remains of DP-872 out. The crew, of course, were recovered from the inside of the aircraft, given a burial in the local church, and the families at the time all agreed, because the Fleet Air Arm Museum, people like R.P. Cox were involved at that stage, and were showing an interest in obviously the size of the pieces of wreckage that were coming out, and the families said that yes, the wreckage could come to the Fleet Air Arm Museum if they intended to do something significant with it in the fullness of time, as a marker of respect not only to their immediate family members, but of course all of the Barracuda crews from World War II. So it's been being collected for a long time. That's not all DP-872. A lot of Barracuda had been collected before I came to the museum many years ago, and it is many years ago now. So I was aware of the collecting program. I was aware of people identifying where bits of Barracuda crash site were all around England. There isn't much worldwide that we know of. I'm sure there is some out there, but we don't necessarily know where it is, except for one significant piece in Norway from the Turkish raid. There is a Barracuda wreck in some high ground there, which we hope to get to look at, if not this year, next year definitely. But there's Barracuda wreckage which I was aware of in the 1980s. There he is at work there. That's the centre section being stripped. He stripped the entire centre section down, nut by bolt by nut by bolt. The whole centre section is stripped into every individual piece, and you'll see in a minute what he's managed to get the team putting back together as what would look like brand new Barracuda, but it isn't. It's 99% reclaimed original Barracuda. It is an astonishing piece of work. It's the tail section. We had that in the shop for a while. We've moved away from the tail section. We have had a settling down period of which bits we're going to be working on. We've had to assess what we've got, what's missing, what makes sense, what's logical, how we would do the build. So we've gone through 2 or 3 juggles of which section we would work on. But we've now got a plan, and that's, again, that's easier to show you when we can break into groups and go into the hangar. Somebody said, can't you just make it out of metal? I hear that quite a lot. Can't you just make new one out of new metal? I'm asked that frequently. No, you can't actually. We don't have enough. There are so many odd pieces of forging and casting and bits of very, very strange shaped metal on the Barracuda that we wouldn't have, that we do have with the wreckage. That's where all Barracudas begin. Doesn't matter who was making them, Bolton Paul, Fairey, Westlands, Blackburn. Every Barracuda starts from frame 11, and Williams researched that in great detail. So that's where ours starts, and actually every Barracuda starts with just that one piece there, built on a bench top. So every single Barracuda starts as being built as a piece that long, and then it gradually turns into a piece that size and that size and that size, and then you need to put it in a jig. And he's researched that entire process, and he's following the entire process properly. The undercarriage fits there and goes 5 feet 6 downwards. So effectively that goes 5 feet 6 upwards, which puts the canopy, once it's on top of there, up about here in the side of the hangar. She is a massive, massive beast. And we don't think that there are numerous aircraft being rebuilt around the world, dozens of them of course, and they're all very, very interesting and very high skilled in their own way, but we don't believe there's another aircraft being built as a vintage aircraft which is incorporating as much original material, not to the percentage level that we're using there. Otherwise it's never going to fly, so we can afford to do that. We can use parts on ours and reincorporate them far, far higher percentage of parts, because ours is never going to fly, but we will go for originality. We're beginning to understand some of the ferocity of the crash, which is sad, but we can't avoid noticing it as we're building. We are looking at and documenting and recording and spotting all of the witness marks from factory building to factory errors to in-service modifications to bad repairs to effects of the crash. All of that we are studying and looking at and recording as we go. That's a plug end out of the top of the undercarriage leg that had 3 high tensile steel cross pins plugging it together, and those are about something like 3/8 or slightly bigger high tensile steel pins cross pinning that into place. We can see there that they ripped out through the collar on top of the leg, and there's been a ripping, skewing motion as that leg has been ripped out of its undercarriage socket. The aim, well, that was the aim when we set out. We'd love to achieve £60,000 over a 6-year period. We've probably got nearly 10 now in the pot, in the Just Giving button on our website, and an estimate, a target of £100,000 to complete and assemble the complete aircraft. Well, that's what we put out on the website. That would put us a long way towards a complete fuselage, definitely. And there he is, looking rather pleased with the tail wheel yoke that we managed to find on eBay, and it wasn't ours. We did look very closely, but thinking we'd come out of the retrieving of our airplane from Newcastle with no tail wheel yoke to come home with it, and tail wheel, which at that point we thought were the only ones pretty much on the planet. We were looking at all kinds of industry input to see if there was 3D modelling and forging and solid billet milling to enable us to have a replacement tail wheel yoke, which would have been a new replacement, and of course it wouldn't have been anything like the original. And lo and behold, in this instance, you've got to be careful what you wish for, but in this instance it came out good, and one appeared on eBay for the princely sum of £90, which we managed to buy. But this is our big area. This is where a lot of people can help, which they don't realise. There must be people perhaps in this room that don't realise that we need proper vintage aeroform nuts and bolts and rivets and tube rivets. There must be people you know that has worked in Westlands, British Aerospace, RAF, in the Navy, Filton, wherever, that has a cocoa tin or a biscuit tin or a Quality Street tin chock full of rivets and nuts and bolts stuck somewhere in the garden shed, which they are going to be useful one day, but they've probably been there for 30 years and the Navy haven't found that use yet. If you do dust them down and decide that the one really good use for them might be for the Barracuda, we will eat nuts and bolts all day long on the Barracuda. We need hundreds of them, 500 2VA bolts in the legs alone, and that's just the undercarriage legs. Look at the rest of the airplane we've got to build. Tube rivets, we are desperately short of tube rivets, old-fashioned 1/4 and 5/16 tube rivets. So there we are, that brings us to our overview of the Barracuda.